Finally resolved some of our technical issues, including Ben being a little bit more energetic and awake during this time frame.
Well, I've got my coffee. So
but no, we had some technical issues, and we are back Money Mondays after a little bit of a hiatus. But don't worry,
we
people.
shot one last week, but I just don't know. I don't think it ended up being live.
Yeah. So. And don't worry, we didn't really get to take a break. We were busy working anyways. So
no, but we missed everybody. I think we're going to try to be consistent with it.
Yeah.
Moving forward. So it's every Monday, 3:30-ish Central, Money Mondays. We're talking real estate. We're talking multifamily. We're talking being an entrepreneur. We're talking tech. Everything in between.
And today we're talking
about tips for navigating the multifamily closing process.
And this is something we're going to be doing here in the next month or two. We have a new deal we're working through, so it's might be a little bit of a refresh for us.
You're letting it out. You're letting the cat out of the bag.
A little bit of a secret. I mean, we don't need to say more than that. Leave it loose.
It's a deal here in Houston that we're really, really excited about. You will hear about it if you're on our email list.
Absolutely.
Right? So we're going to get right into this because we got a couple minutes behind here. So, questions that came in. What are the steps that take place in the multifamily closing process? There's a lot of them. There's definitely a lot. So, I guess I'm going to go with the high level.
Let's just talk about what, from time you get accepted LOI, maybe that's the starting point?
Yeah, I think that's, because there is some misconceptions about that. And I was actually talking about this today with somebody, right? So, whenever we make offers, folks, right, we're submitting an LOI, letter of intent. It's a non-binding, it's not a contract. Anybody can walk away. Anybody can say yes and then walk away as well, right? So what we're making offers, when we say we're making offers, is we're giving letters of intent. Typically what that's going to be is purchase price, are we going to put any earnest money up? How much? Is any of it non-refundable? How long is the closing process going to be? And maybe some other more deal-specific terms, right? You just want to get the high-level stuff, right? Typically, you're going to go through the process, with the broker, and there's going to be a best and final, and there's going to be seller interviews, and they're going to try to squeeze as much juice out of the deal as possible. And then guess what? You got to order the deal. Well, they're going to countersign that LOI, and now you've got an LOI in place, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of the start of the initial part of the process. From there, depending on if you have an early access agreement or not, we'll get into that here in a minute, you're trying to negotiate the purchase and sale agreement, or the PSA. That is the actual contract that you have to buy the property, right? And that has some teeth in it, unlike the LOI, like I said, is non-binding. So from there, right, you're getting your lawyers involved, and they're kicking the PSA back and forth. Typically, the seller's going to provide a draft. Then you're going to go through and you're going to mark it up. There's going to be going back and forth. Typically, if everybody wants to get a deal done, it's going to take 1 to 2 weeks. It can sometimes go a little bit quicker. Sometimes we've seen it go a lot longer than that, depending on how rigid people are.
Yep.
Right?
But we're going to knock it out here in less than a week.
I'd say, a few days, right? Really 3 or 4 business days.
So it can be done faster, people.
We are motivated, and ultimately the document that we saw from the seller was pretty fair.
It's amazing how quickly things can go whenever everybody's motivated.
Yeah, typically.
Seller's motivated, we're motivated.
Everybody wants to get that deal done by the end of the year, so typically that process is going to get expedited, right? And the seller is going to tell their lawyer, hey, don't jam these guys up, let's just get this thing done. So at the end of the day, right, you're going to go through that process. There's going to be a lot of red lines. For people that aren't used to contracts, red lines is just stuff that you scratch out that you don't like, that you're trying to delete. And typically, if it's not a bloodbath, you're going to be able to get it done pretty quickly. Like I said, 1 to 2 weeks. Now you're under contract. Now the fun stuff starts, right?
Yep.
Why don't you pick it up from there, man? What happens then?
Once you get under contract, right, which is really a formally executed PSA, 20, 30, 40, 50, 80-page document outlining every little bit, nuance. Typically, right, unless you negotiate what's called an early access agreement, that's whenever you start your due diligence, right? Yep. You start preparation for due diligence, which means getting your property management company out there, your team out there, doing your lease audits, all of the due diligence stuff. And we've done a previous show on due diligence, so we're not going to dwell on that, but there is a thing called due diligence, which is validating what you're buying is what you think you're buying.
Yeah, you're popping the hood, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're gonna go meet some guy or gal to buy a used car, right? You're gonna bring a mechanic along, and you're gonna try to, well, sometimes you are, right? You're gonna verify that the damn thing works and it's in good condition, and you're ultimately getting what you're paying for, right? So we're doing the same thing.
And then in tandem, right, you're getting usually your lender spun up,
Yep.
Right? And by the time you have executed PSA, you probably already got your attorney spun up.
Yes.
But if you're syndicating, you're probably getting all that paperwork going, right? You know, like right now, for the new deal, we're at the point where we're identifying the name, getting the entities created, getting the PPM and the operating agreement, all those things moving along as well, right? So, you know, you're getting all these pieces moving along so that way you can start to go through the closing process, right? Once any of these pieces move along, let's talk about lending first. Right. Usually
that's the most, and I'd say that's the most challenging.
The most
to get
time
anything done
sensitive
quickly.
a little bit because that thing can slow everything else down.
It absolutely can.
Right. And so with that case, you're looking at the different offers that you got from the different lenders, and you're making a decision. Right. How much loan proceeds? What interest rates are they giving you? What thresholds are they giving you whenever certain things happen? Right. You're analyzing that and understanding that, so you can get the lender picked, so you can get the third parties ordered, right? On this deal, we actually got asked this question: what is our biggest concern about the deal? And it's actually third parties.
Yeah.
That was my answer, right? Just making sure third parties move more quickly. And third parties is getting your environmentals out there, getting the appraisal out there, getting the property condition out there, right? Those guys right now are severely backlogged. There's a lot of transactions happening, so you want to get to the front of the line. But you can't do that until you really pick your lender, usually, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so that's going on in tandem, right? What's going on with the attorney and the paperwork? What's usually going on there with most guys?
Yeah. So remember, folks, like I know we're going through a lot, but a lot of this is probably happening in parallel to the other pieces, right? You're moving multiple balls forward, right? And we always talk about this. The closing process is like project management on steroids, right? So there's a ton of moving pieces, and you have to keep them moving in the right direction. So just keep yourself organized, keep a checklist, make sure that you're doing the right things at the right time. And ultimately, if you have the right team behind you, right? Maybe it's a partner that's done this before that can kind of help you with that process, or you've got a good attorney, or you've got a good mortgage broker, you got a good insurance guy, you got, all these people, title, right? All these people want you to close. They get paid at closing, right? And they are also your service providers, so they are looking out for your best interests. So take their advice. They will push you to the closing table. All right. So make sure that you're constantly talking to them, because they will tell you the next step if you don't know what you're doing. Right. And some people, when they first start off, me included, didn't really know what I didn't know. Right. And you're just kind of fumbling your way through. But luckily, I had a good team behind me.
And Ben still doesn't really know what he doesn't know. So let's be honest.
So let's just be honest. Right. So as far as, so you talked about that, you talked about the lender, right? We'll talk about attorney, right? So as far as attorney goes, right, once you're past due diligence and you're saying, okay, I'm going to close this deal, I'm ready to go, right? You want to spin up what's called the PPM, which we've talked about in the past, private placement memorandum. It's going to go through all the risks and the whole entire business plan. And these are some of the things that you need to know about the deal. And on top of that, you're going to do your operating agreement or your company agreement, right? What's going to dictate, how you operate that LLC. You're going to have a subscription agreement. Remember, as syndicators, right, we're selling shares of an LLC, right? And as part of that, we have to have a document that's called a subscription agreement. We are selling a part of that, and that's what that document is called, right? And then typically, depending on what you do, 506C or 506B, there might be some kind of a questionnaire in there. So 4 documents that your attorney is going to be able to draft for you. And if you are using a reputable SEC attorney, they already got templates for all this stuff, and they already know what you're going to need, right? So go ahead and spin that up, because sometimes that takes time, right? Parallel to that, you're going to be raising some money, right? So you're a syndicator. You got to go pool people's money together. So you should, depending on how you go about raising equity, and we do it in a certain way, right? We'll typically send out an email. We'll invite people to a webinar. We'll go through the webinar. And what we present on the webinar is essentially a deck, right? An investor deck. And it's anywhere from 30 to 50 pages long, and it's going through the whole entire business plan, right? Why do we like the deal? Why do we like the area? What are we going to do as far as CapEx? Everything that really anybody would need to know if they're looking at it after the fact to understand if they like this deal or not. Right? So that is our process. So you need to be doing that parallel to getting the PPM spun up too, because they incorporate your investor deck as part of the PPM, right? So they're kind of tied together, right? And all of these things are happening within a week or two of you getting the deal under contract, right? Which is called the effective date, right? Day 1. And so all of this stuff is happening fairly quickly on.
And I'd say usually in terms of chaos, right? I'd say the first 2 weeks are probably the most chaotic.
And then the last 2 weeks.
And then things kind of sizzle a little bit. And then, the last 2 weeks, right? And so it's kind of that. I mean, and honestly, if we can't hear Ben, it's probably not a big problem. I think he dropped his thing, but we're probably good to go. But, it comes in phases, right? Because at the beginning you're scrambling to get everybody spun up, right?
Yep.
Then you kind of, there's the lull of waiting for everybody to do their part, and you're probably raising equity. Then there's kind of the chaos of everybody wakes up at the finish line to start to kind of get this thing across the finish line.
And that's true, right? So it's kind of, it's ebbs and flows.
Yeah, and as and there's things that are going on throughout it, right? Other things that we didn't talk about, like you're doing lenders asking a lot of back and forth questions, right? What's your pro forma? What's your budget? Yep. What's your capital improvements, right? What's the background on the property management company? What's the payroll that you guys are choosing, right? All of that, you're working with your property management company probably to interview the staff and prepare what they need to do for takeover, right? Property management companies typically they're doing things about 45 days in advance, starting to get things set up, all the different software, all the different tools, getting utilities. You can't transfer utilities, but getting some of these other things prepared to where it's just boom, 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 right? So there's a lot that goes into these bigger transactions, a lot of people involved, right? It's about working through it.
And we got a part 2 to this next week, so we can kind of dive into some of that. But let's talk about some of the biggest lessons that we've learned, and have we learned a lesson or two?
Pick the right lender, guys.
Yeah, I'd say that's one of the biggest ones. Is if you pick the wrong lender, they're going to jam you up, folks. Like that is the biggest time suck as far as the closing process goes. People always think that it's raising equity, and some people that might be starting off, that might be their biggest challenge. But eventually, you're going to get better at that, and that's not going to be your biggest jam. It's always going to be the lender. Because across the board, lenders are on a rung of good to bad, right? None of them are really that great. We've seen some that have closed fairly quickly, but they certainly put you through the ringer. And they're just like Ferris had alluded to, right? The last 2 weeks is like a fire drill. It's like it'd been sitting on somebody's desk until the very end, and then they finally got to your file, and they're like, oh, we got to close this in 2 weeks. Let's actually do some work. So I would say pick your lender, right? Understand that some stuff takes longer than you expect it to take, right? I think the other lesson that, that probably you need to understand, right, is having your partners all identified and all those roles are identified ahead of time. People have a tendency to start glomming people together after the fact. Well, guess what? The lender wants to know who's on the team, right? Who's going to be the KPs. You can't just be lobbing people on at the back part of the process. And then we're also seeing a lot of people that are doing preferred equity, which we love, but they're doing it at the wrong part of the process, right? You've got to incorporate this stuff up front, because once again, that's another blocker that the lender will use to jam you up to not get things done. And then like Ferris had alluded, right now, one of the biggest lessons that we've learned is get your third parties in pretty early on too, because they're going to take a while. Everybody's transacting right now, and the holidays are coming up. Everybody wants to get a deal done before the end of the year. So if you're trying to close right now, folks, my advice to you is get those third parties ordered.
Yep.
So what is the most challenging aspect of the multifamily closing process?
It comes and goes, I guess. Maybe for most people, the more complex thing is just if you're raising money, working through all the mechanics of that. We have a dedicated person on investor relations, but checking all the paperwork, getting all the funds received, right? Getting everybody properly set up. I'd say that's pretty busy for most people. What else can be challenging? Some days
you got to keep that organized.
Yeah.
You got to keep that organized. I would say the most challenging thing is weathering things that are out of your control. Right, and we had a deal recently, and there was a little bit of crime right before the closing process. Right, that had nothing to. We didn't do anything wrong. Lender really didn't do anything wrong, but that was a challenge. So you have to realize that this stuff pops up. Right, so understand what you're signing yourself up for. Understand the different terms and conditions within your PSA that might buy you some more time if something pops up, right? Or make sure that you have a little bit of buffer in your underwriting, right? Because your lender might come back and say, you know what? Yeah, I know we told you that we were going to give you 3 years of interest-only payments, but now it's only going to be 2.
Yeah.
And that certainly happens too, right? So those are some of the biggest challenges that you really need to understand can pop up that could ultimately jam you up. right? And then I'd say also natural disasters, right? And once again, something that should be baked into your PSA, but here in Houston, hurricanes are just a way of life. And what if they come in and they take out half the property?
Fires, right? All this stuff happens.
Yeah.
And, that to Ben's point, that's the most stressful part, right?
Yes.
That's where Ben and I handle differently, right? Ben's face turns really red. I know something bad probably happened, and we kind of have to work through it because some of it's not fun. Like you're near the finish line, and you're like, man, we just got to take a deep breath collectively, right?
Yeah.
And all right, here's the problem. Here's how you work through it. Okay, a fire happened. Great. How bad was it? Okay, let's figure out a way where the seller, is either going to put some money in escrow while we work through the insurance so we can at least close, or we're going to, you figure it out, right? All these things have challenges.
And we've had all that, right? We've had crime. We've had car accidents.
We've had fires. We had the same deal. Had both. What was it? A car accident and
the lady thought she was putting it in drive. She put it in reverse.
Crashed into the building. But there was another thing that happened at that same property. There's two things.
There was a fire.
Was it a fire? It was a fire.
It took out 2 units. So
two different things happened.
So folks, this is funny. So it was a 150 something unit property, right? But between the time that we got it under contract and the time we closed, 4 units got taken out. 2 by the car accident, 2 by a fire, right? And each time was like a big thing, right? Yeah. Because the lender is underwriting to certain revenues, and they understand that's going to take time, and all of this jams up their process and ultimately their underwriting. Yeah. And ultimately we were able to work it out, but those sellers weren't easy.
No, the seller was a pain. I mean, that deal. I remember telling Ben, I think it was I checked the numbers on our
100 phone calls.
Yeah, like 100 phone calls and over 100 emails that day of closing just to get everybody in agreement.
So you got to realize, sometimes the seller's going to say, screw you, pay me, right? I don't care if this happened. You're the one that's on the hook. So you need to make sure you have those mechanisms in your PSA to go back and say, no, if this happens, this is what's going to happen, right? To buy yourself some more time so you can work through it with the lender or work through it with the insurance company or whatever you might need to do. So those are some challenging things that happen more often than you would think. So you need to understand that stuff will pop up. You're just going to have to work through it. And as long as you have the right team, I think you'll be all right. So There's plenty more to this topic. We'll go through this next week, right? There's going to be a part 2 to this. But I'm going to go ahead and pause. We got any questions?
So let's see. We got some comments. Trevor, wow, got on today. Last few weeks could not get into the Facebook Live. Miss you. Glad you did not block me. Come on, Trevor. You're a big supporter. We would not block you. All right?
No. We've had some technical difficulties, and so now I think Restream's back online. So.
Everybody, Savion says, "What's up, guys?
What's up, buddy? It's been a while."
Let's see. So Gregory Woods asks, "What's a reasonable or average cost for SEC attorney charges for full services on a smaller $1 to $2 million raise?" Good question, but also the wrong question. And the reason I say that is the pricing for the SE attorney to do, there's kind of, I'd say 3 buckets, right? There is doing the contracts, PSA, all of that. Yep. There's all of the SEC paperwork, the PPM, the company agreement, the entity, all that. And the third thing I'm going to call is and I'm calling it separate because this one is kind of raise dependent, which is your blue sky filings and fees, right? That are not really going to the attorney. Right. Now, to do the first 2 where you're getting an attorney that does to me, full service means they're doing your contracts, which is your PSA and those pieces, and they're also doing SEC paperwork to do the PPM, the company agreement, what am I missing, the questionnaire, those kind of things, right? Those 2 together, typically you're looking at that 15 to 20K is kind of the industry norm. Now, the blue sky filings is where you can get bit because that's state specific. It really depends on how many investors you have in how many different states, right? If you have one investor in one state,
because I think New York is like $1,000 an investor.
Some of these states are really expensive, and so and I don't know, it might even be by investor or is it just by the number of states? I don't remember. Five investors in New York, is it 5? But anyways,
no, you might be right. It might be $1,000
I thought it was by just the number. So we did a big raise, and we had we might as well. We need to get like a map of this 50 states to see which state we didn't get.
20 or 25,000.
And I think that deal we had 30 different states probably, right? Yeah. And so that we had a lot of fees, right? Versus if we had raised all of our money from one investor in Texas, we probably would have to pay very little, right? So
let me say one thing about this too, right? That's one thing, folks. Don't try to poor boy it. I know that it seems like a lot of money, and on a smaller deal it might, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, you want the right folks, right? So I mean, 15, 20,000 in the grand scheme of things to get a $5-10 million deal across the finish line, I'd say pay the money, right?
Yeah, but to Gregory's point, I mean, it's a smaller array, so 1520 probably feels like a lot, I guess. So, but yeah, to Ben's point, it's more about the blue sky stuff in my mind, that where you find a big variance in the pricing.
Yeah. All right, what do we got?
Let's keep going. So, Manish says, great tips. Thanks to both of you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Amanda Larson, long time no see. Hope to see you Thursday. Our meetup is Thursday. Says, what are your thoughts on using the broker's in-house lender?
Oh,
that is a great question. So, using the broker's in-house lender, first and foremost, never use a lender that is not competent. That's the first. No, really. Make sure that is a person that you trust, regardless if they're in-house or not.
Yeah,
because
that's
that'll
true.
screw up your deal. So if you're not getting the right vibes from this person, and you don't feel like they got the track record, they know what they're doing, I mean, it's never worth it, right? Now, that said, using the broker's in-house lender has its own benefits, right?
It does.
They can help make sure usually a smoother transaction. It gives the seller some confidence. And sometimes there's incentives as well. So, it just depends on the deal, depends on the situation, and depends on, you can still use a mortgage broker to kind of manage your side and have the in-house, counsel, the in-house lender that does the direct us piece of it. But,
I would say, Amanda, we've done it. We're gonna do it. I think we're. It's all deal specific, though, right? Is this the right fit for the deal? But I would not. Don't let the broker try to talk you into it. You need to ultimately, like Ferris said, you need to feel comfortable that you're going the right direction, right? And then I'd say this the same thing too about any mortgage broker or any lender. Right? Get a good feel, do some interviews, make sure that you're comfortable with that person, right? Because at the end of the day, they can muck up the works very, very quickly if they're not the right fit, right? So that would be my feedback on that one. Any other questions?
Let's see. If anyone has any more comments, questions, leave them. We will answer them live. Gregory says, thanks guys, great value. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Otherwise, going once, so we'll keep going. So, what do we have?
It
coming up, Ben?
Well, it wouldn't be a Money Monday if we didn't talk about Multifamily Investor Network, right?
Yeah, which is our big conference. This is going to be the big one. People, our Houston one in our backyard. Come hang out with us. Come see some awesome speakers. It is our biggest, bestest.
When is it?
It's coming up February 12th.
Oh, February 12th. And we've got an October sale.
If you notice, Ben was wearing his mask, right? So we have our big Halloween sale. So.
It's so scary that we're not making any money on any of this because we're giving the tickets away, folks.
And it's a place to come network, right? Our goal with this conference is to let people network and get exposed to all this, right? Bring in experts. We got Tom Wheelwright coming.
Robert Helms,
really good, speaker.
Right, we got Robert. Don't we got Robert?
Yeah.
We got Robert.
Robert Helms. We got Garrett Sutton talking about asset management. We have a lot of people coming in. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We're really excited about it, and so it's a great place to kind of. Now, it's cheap, guys. Like I said, we don't make any money on it. Check it out. October, 150 to get a discount for the Halloween sale before tickets will continue to go up. We'll probably have 400 or 500 people. So hope to see you guys there.
So mfinvestornetwork.com, put in OCT150, the coupon code, get $150 off those executive tickets. I think we're pretty much out of VIP, maybe a few more. So if you want to get those locked in, do that quick. I know this is quite a ways out, folks, but go ahead and get things locked in now. Because it's going to be a good time.
Came in, I do want to answer because it's kind of near and dear a little bit. It seems like as you're near the finish line, lender holds all the leverage, can't ask additional items near closing. How do you keep them in check?
It's tough.
It's a couple things. Your clout, right? You got to have to, clout helps. You say, look, we're active buyers. If you screw this up, we're not going to use you again. Your mortgage broker or your lender's clout also helps, right? Let them leverage. That's their job, right? They're getting paid to go get this deal done. So they also say, hey, we've sent you a lot of business. If you screw this up, we're not going to send you more business, right?
Yeah.
To Ben's point, a lot of people are motivated, right? If a deal fits the check boxes, it goes quickly. So whenever some things deviate, like you have crime that shows up or something like that, right? And I'd also add to that a little bit, one big feedback is make sure everyone knows the timeline to work against. What we've seen is lenders, especially lender counsel, tend to not do anything until the week of closing, right? Because everyone just looks at the contract, says when's the last day you can close, and that's what everybody worked towards. And so as a buyer, you need to be very proactive about telling people, hey, I know the contract says we can extend until November 30th. Screw that, we're closing November 15th. If anyone has any problem with that, you come let me know now. And keep pounding that home. Right, because they will absolutely work towards November 30th if someone does not push them along, to work towards November 15th.
No, I 100% agree. But that's a great point. It's hard. You're gonna feel like they're gonna squeeze you a little bit at the end, especially if something random pops up. But you gotta push through it and really leverage the people that you're working with and their clout to try to get past that. But those are the challenges that you're gonna have. But trust me, they've tried to bully us around too. And we've always used the same line. Hey, we're buyers. We've got a big mic. We're going to be in this industry for the next 20 years. Let's see how we can work through this, right?
All right, let's keep going.
Cool. All right. So what's coming up next week, buddy?
Next week, talking about part 2, navigating the closing process. All the tips and tricks we didn't talk about today, which I don't know what they were, but we're going to find out.
We're going to talk about a lot more. So tune in. It's going to be an exciting part 2.
Absolutely. And maybe we'll announce more
process.
about our deal. So next Monday, we will see you guys.